Hi, this is Tom. I'd like to read the first 80 lines of Seamus Heaney's translation of Beowulf to you, just so you can kind of get a feel for the sound of the words, rather than having to read them yourself. Probably this is enough for you to get an idea of things like alliteration and caesura, the slight pause in the middle of each line. Look for litetes and, of course, the kennings. There is a short test with answers following this text in a printable Word doc, which I would suggest you do print out, or at least look at on screen, and sort of see how you do with the identification of some of the terms in the context of the poem itself. Here we go. So, the Speardanes in days gone by and the kings who ruled them had courage and greatness. We have heard of those princes' heroic campaigns. There was Shield Chieftain, scourge of many tribes, a wrecker of mead halls, rampaging among foes. This terror of the hall troops had come far. A foundling to start with, he would flourish later on as his powers waxed and his worth was proved. In the end, each clan on the outlying coast beyond the whale road had to yield to him, begin to pay tribute. That was one good king. Afterwards, a boy child was born to Shield, a cub in the yard, a comfort sent by God to that nation. He knew what they had told, the long times and troubles they'd come through without a leader. So the Lord of Life, the glorious Almighty, made this man renowned. Shield had fathered a famous son. Beo's name was known through the north, and a young prince must be prudent like that, giving freely while his father lives, so that afterwards, in an age when fighting starts, his steadfast companions will stand by him and hold the line. Behavior that's admired is the path to power among people everywhere. Shield was still thriving when his time came, and he crossed over into the Lord's keeping. His warrior band did what he bade them when he laid down the law among the Danes. They shouldered him out to the sea's flood, the chief they revered who had long ruled them. A ring-whirled prow rode in the harbor, ice-clad, outbound, a craft for a prince. They stretched their beloved lord in his boat, laid out by the mast amidships, the great ring-giver. Far-fetched treasures were piled upon him, and precious gear. I have never heard before of a ship so well furbished with battle tackle, bladed weapons, and coats of mail. The massed treasure was loaded on top of him. It would travel far on out onto the ocean's sway. They decked his body no less bountifully with offerings than those first ones did who cast him away when he was a child and launched him alone out over the waves. And they set a gold standard up high above his head and let him drift to wind and tide, bewailing him and mourning their loss. No man can tell, no wise man in hall or weathered veteran knows for certain who salvaged that load. Then it fell to Beo to keep the forts. He was well regarded and ruled the Danes for a long time after his father took leave of his life on earth. And then his heir, the great half-Dane, held sway for as long as he lived, their elder and warlord. He was 4 times a father, this fighter prince. One by one they entered the world. Haregar, Hrothgar, the good Helga, and a daughter I have heard who was Aenila's queen, a balm in bed to the battle-scarred Swede. The fortunes of war favored Hrothgar. Friends and kinsmen flocked to his ranks, young followers, a force that grew to be a mighty army. So his mind turned to hall building. He handed down orders for men to work on a great mead hall meant to be a wonder of the world forever. It would be his throne room, and there he would dispense his God-given goods to young and old, but not the common land or people's lives. Far and wide through the world, I've heard, orders for work to adorn that wallstead were sent to many peoples, and soon it stood there, finished and ready, in full view, the Hall of Halls. Hera was the name he had settled on, whose utterance was law. Nor did he renege, but dole out rings and torques at the table. The hall towered, its gables wide and high, awaiting a barbarous burning. That doom abided, but in time it would come. The killer instinct unleashed among in-laws, the blood